Hi everyone, today I'm going to cover Powkiddy's RK2023. I'm genuinely quite surprised this has been my first Powkiddy handheld review for quite a while, as when I first started the channel I remember it being a different handheld every other week from them. However, the RK2023 has a horizontal design reminiscent of what the PSP Go could have looked like without the slider mechanism and some more buttons thrown in. In terms of specs, the RK2023 comes with the RK3566 chip with 1GB of RAM that should comfortably emulate up to Dreamcast pretty well across the game catalogues. It comes with a 3.5-inch IPS screen at 640 by 480 resolution, which is actually a pretty decent performer all round. There's no rumble motor built in, or Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, which is slightly confusing considering the OS is full of references for it because they thought the custom firmware of Gelos for their StockOS. The horizontal design works pretty well for the RK2023, with the inline shoulder buttons keeping the shell relatively thin, and it not being able to emulate anything or stream anything new enough to really make the most out of stacked shoulder buttons anyway. I like how the volume buttons and power reset buttons are indented a little on the top, and the micro HDMI out is a nice feature to have too. The sides are kept clean, with the I/O being at the top and bottom only, with the RK2023 featuring dual speakers, 2 microSD card slots, that's one for the OS and one for games, 2 USB-C ports and a headphone jack on the bottom of the handheld. Something which really helped visualise the layout for me was comparing it to Ambinix RG35XX, which I consider a great travel companion in terms of portability, and seeing how similar in size the RK2023 matches up to it, despite it being a horizontal design compared to a vertical one. This is all to say that if portability is an important factor to you, the RK2023 stacks up quite favourably, all things considered. With all that said, the RK2023 does have a toy-like finish to it, where the plastic just has this toy sheen to it, and there's quite a lot of rattling when you shake the shell. And the RK2023 logo, of course, takes up a pretty chunky space at the bottom centre of the design. The controls on the whole aren't too bad, with one major downside. A lot of the rattle comes from the shoulder buttons, which feel as loose in the shell as they sound when shaking the handheld, and the joysticks feel somewhat restricted by their double indent design. But the biggest downside is the D-pad. The D-pad design isn't just an unusual look, but really drags the RK2023 back from being a budget go-to it had every opportunity to be. Its rounded edges make it look like it's going to be a smooth pivot, but it has way too much travel to every direction, and it feels like there's just too much space to pull off accurate multi-directional input. In fact, you'll see in the gameplay footage later on that I do unexpected diagonal movement all of the time, which personally grates on me very quickly. It's a shame as the button inputs are actually surprisingly good, and although it's a loud handheld to play, other than the D-pad it's a pretty responsive one. I won't say that's a device ruiner, as once I got used to the roundness, I was able to pull off minor moves in fighter games relatively easily, but I will say it's the most disappointing aspect to the handheld for me, as actually in most other places the RK2023 performs well or better than I expected, so it easily would have been a strong recommendation all round if it just had a better D-pad. Speaking of better than expected, one thing that did surprise me straight away with the RK2023 was just how good the StockOS experience is. This is completely down to Powkiddy forking Gelos for their stock firmware, so it comes with a load of optimizations and features that you wouldn't necessarily expect from a StockOS experience. There are a couple of downsides from this approach though, mainly to those who would be using RK2023 as their first handheld. For example, there are references to Wi-Fi and Bluetooth connections and associated features like retro achievements within the OS that just can't be used without plugging in a Wi-Fi dongle. It's slower than usual booting, and some of the features don't seem to work quite right at all. Like, I couldn't switch Nintendo DS games to start from Melon DS instead of RetroArch, for example. The option's still there, but it just doesn't take for whatever reason, which massively hampers Nintendo DS emulation. Other than these downsides though, as a whole I was impressed with the StockOS experience. So, just before I switched to some gameplay footage, I did notice in the system settings of the StockOS that there was a toggle that says Devices RK2023, which remained untoggled when I first got my unit. I'm not too sure what that toggle actually does, perhaps it's related to the updates or something like that, but I thought I'd just leave it toggled while I try and figure out what it does. Anyway, I'll cut some gameplay footage now and summarise back up at the end. So, overall, I think the RK2023 is a pretty good Powkiddy device. The D-pad is holding it back from being my new go-to budget recommendation, but it's a relatively low entry price to decent performance ratio, not to mention a good performing screen, decent 5-ish hour battery life, and pocketability, does still make it a contender for getting into handheld retro gaming. That's it for now though, thanks so much for watching.